Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I am here with a slightly scratchy voice in Brooklyn, H.A. Conrad, coming to you along with my intrepid co-host, as always, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hi.
You're not scratchy voiced, but, you know, you've got that nice baritone thing going on.
That is the voice of a man who was asleep 15 minutes ago, peacefully.
But we have a few things to chat about today, a few news items, and then we're also going to jump into a recap of The Passage, Season 1, Episode 3. And let's kick it off because there looks like, at least for us, this is exciting because there are several different potential projects in the works. Unfortunately, there's not like necessarily a timeline on them, but there is a list basically that came out of upcoming zombie movies, and there's a few projects that I think look kind of interesting to me. Primarily the one with Maisie Williams, a la Game of Thrones fame, and then there are films we've already talked about, obviously like Zombieland 2, but there is the much rumored Train to Busan 2, which is a little bit. I don't know. I think it's still out there. Like, I don't know that is a solid go yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, and there's things like Johnny Z, which looks like a martial arts type, slightly low budget picture. And so many of these are rumored and don't have the release dates that it's not like you should get excited about them for 2019. In fact, the latest World War Z rumor is that they start filming in June of this year. So say hello to maybe World War Z2 in 2020 if we're lucky.
Right.
It's, if everything goes well and they don't have to do reshoots like they did the first time.
True.
Forest of Hands and Teeth has like zero information online.
Yeah, but it looks cool, so I'm hoping that it goes, obviously. But one of the films that they do talk about, and this we'll throw into the show notes, our friends at Forbes did a whole article about this, but it basically is a film that Zack Snyder has signed on to, which is essentially a heist happening during the zombie apocalypse in Vegas. And it is helmed by Zack Snyder, who's been off the map a little bit just because, obviously he had a lot of tragedy that happened. And this is his first foray back. He's given a lot of interviews, though, for this, and I don't know that they necessarily have a timeline at all. So it's interesting that it's getting so much play. But maybe that is just sort of the trying to pave the road to get all the hype there, similar to Zombieland 2.
And Zack Snyder directed Dawn of the Dead 2004, right. I think 4.
Right.
Which makes him sort of a pioneer for modern zombie films.
Right. And this film would be called Army of the Dead. Mm-hmm. So, this is the thing about Zack Snyder. I know people have he is quite a divisive character. Some people really disliked Dawn of the Dead, his remake, for a variety of reasons, but mainly because it didn't adhere to the George Romero sort of slower zombie genre. I personally liked it, and I do think that as a director in general, his grasp of the visual and action sequences is really beautiful and incredible. But I have to tell you, I took a pause at his comment that he finally doesn't have anybody, like, he has nobody reining him in, and I kind of think he may need people to rein him in. but that's just one person's opinion. I think he probably works better as a collaborator or with other people to help even out the storytelling, because I think that, if anything, that is his weakness. He just doesn't have the chops to like, tell really deep character storylines and things like that. But I don't know, did you ever see what was that terrible film that he did, and it had some like really beautiful action sequences, but that was like pretty much all the movie. Sucker Punch.
I never saw that. Or if I did, I promptly forgot about it because
Well, I'm not recommending it to anybody. I'm just saying that to me is sort of indicative of what happens when he doesn't have people reining him in. Just one person's opinion, though.
Yeah. Well, he's
that
the
said,
writer and the director on that. Also of interest is the zombie versus robots project called Inherit the Earth,
yeah,
which right now all they have is like art from the comic, which is an IDW production. But this would take the genre into a new
realm
new on
entirely.
film, new on film realm, which is pretty exciting. So I'd hope to see something. Apparently, it's been in production since 2011. Oh boy.
Yeah, so this has had a long history. I don't know what they're gonna do with this. I would bet, I don't know. I would bet that this is not going to come out for a very, very, very long time.
Well, we'll see. I mean, the Army of the Dead apparently is going back to 2008. They've been talking about and kicking this one around. So
True.
we'll see. And then also at the very bottom of the list is the Walking Dead movie trilogy, which we do have to consider as future fodder. And I think we could legitimately get excited about that stuff. Just even if the basic premise of Jadis's weird helicopter people and Rick's future storyline not being that engaging for me, unless he ends up in Europe, which I'm hoping is going to be the case.
That could be cool. I would be all right with that.
Yeah.
And at least it gives like an option to get out of, to get to see what's happening in the other parts of the world. So that would be cool.
Yeah.
You found a couple articles.
Oh, so yeah.
What's interesting is that I thought about this because I was like, if this would happen during a government shutdown, and I was having similar thoughts, so I was laughing that you put this in here.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that you saw this and also thought the same thing. So this is mostly inspired by a New York Times article about Joshua Tree National Park, which is in Southern California, and is famous for its Joshua trees. And during the government shutdown, some vandals went in and drove new roads through the wildlife. Yep. Chopped down Joshua trees, and
which honestly, like, they're a pretty delicate thing. You can't really mess too much with them, and it's like we're talking like hundreds of years worth of damage that these people did.
Yeah, and this is the thought that comes into my mind and HA's because we are. I thought that I was optimistic about humanity because I've often made the argument in zombie movies and apocalypse movies like, oh, there's no way it would get this bad this fast. Oh, no way. They've had no power for 2 days and they're rioting. No way. But in the case of the, how many weeks was the government shutdown? Like 4 weeks?
Yep.
Apparently that was enough, even with all the comforts of life and home available.
Yep.
To just be like, I'm gonna mess this tree up real good.
Well, I will also point out, though, that at like Yosemite, at Joshua Tree, and at these other places, there were good people that did actually, like, they were taking the trash out. They were like, people were hiring private sanitation trucks to help try to keep that stuff under control. So there were definitely good Samaritans, but there were also bad actors and just people that don't really care, and just when left to their own devices, this is what happens. The quintessential, this is why we can't have nice things. Mm-hmm. But I also thought it was interesting, the other article you threw in there also mentioned, and this was at Point Reyes National Park. It wasn't necessarily just the people, it was also because without the rangers and things there to kind of keep things under control, like these elephant seals just kind of ended up in spots that they shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, that's the weird way to say it, right? It's their habitat. Yeah. So they moved into beaches that had been set aside for humans.
Well, true. I know.
But so now elephant seals, which are extremely dangerous seals, right? You don't mess
big.
with elephant seals. They're giant like cars. Have moved into what's the name of the Point Reyes National Seashore, right in front of the visitor center for this national park and their parking area. And they've had 40 pups in the time that they have basically started a new colony in the time that the government shutdown had happened. And so I'm like, there's a video attached to this article too. There was where, it's a YouTube video. And, the park ranger's like, I'm not sure how we're going to deal with this. This is because, I don't know how environmentalists are going to react to them being like, all right, let's tranquilize an entire colony of elephant seals and move them elsewhere, or let's make this beautiful beach less hospitable to the elephant seals. Fact
Right.
is that they're hey, you snooze, you lose, and now it's the elephant seals that are snoozing on the beach all day long, and that's pretty cool in my book. I think that's cool.
Well, somewhat connected with this, and just in terms of like how good or not good we are at dealing with these wild animals and things like that. I don't know if you happened to see the article about the leopard that was running loose in a city in India.
I saw some video of that. That looked messed up.
The video, okay, one leopard, and look at the chaos and it was terrifying. Like that poor thing was, the leopard was scared, and that's like kind of why it was like trying to get out. Ultimately they tranked it, but there was like multiple videos, and people were trying to like get photos with it, and things like that, and also then deservedly, I think, got attacked by it. But we're not the best at dealing with these things without having some kind of plan in place. And so this is just, one, like a couple of instances where nature is sort of there, clearly stronger. So imagine what would happen if all hell broke loose, basically.
Yeah.
So I also have to think, just in terms of like the Joshua Tree stuff, if people are looking for fuel, for things to cut down, like, I mean, I would imagine all those those protected resources, those are probably like the first to go, because they're like these very rich places. So it's kind of a sad thing to think about, but
I don't think that would happen in this country, because there's so much other forest. We are different. We are still different from like Europe, which was, deforested, reforested, deforested, reforested. Where there's still, I mean, at least where I live, there's forest all around the town where I live.
But if you're looking at places with game, with like, just basically food sources.
Yeah.
Well,
reading these two articles led me to watch Life After People, which is on YouTube.
Is that like in a world without humans?
Yeah, I guess it's I don't know if it was the original. It looked pretty old. The resolution was like old school, box, square. And they go from, if all humans disappear, and then they go to like, I think 500 years in the future, or 150 years in the future. And
oh wait, is this the one where they have like the crack and it shows like water and trees growing through the Bill of Rights and stuff?
They had water and trees growing on this the Lincoln Memorial. I don't know if it was the Bill of Rights. And they just showed, they had like biologists and other people speculating about how quickly animals would take over cities, and it would, like the initial push is pretty fast. And for forests to reclaim areas obviously would take a bit longer, because they're going to grow slower, but it's going to go. Anyway, this was an interesting little thing to have on in the background while I was doing other stuff. And so Life After People was the YouTube. And
I think they also do one with the Queen of England and how her corgis would like eat her or something like that. It's
up.
like,
that was not this one.
It's just like a really weird group of videos.
They did talk about how dogs would, if they could, the first thing they have to do is get out of the house, and then they would basically
revert to their wild ways.
Yeah, effectively devolve into wolves, but all of the like teacup-sized dogs would die right away.
Yeah, probably.
They seem to kind of relish the thought of
they're not psyched about purebred dogs in that series. Yeah, I think the other thing that I think would be, especially for humans, and I feel like they talk about this as well, as the access to clean and fresh water, because like all that, especially in places like cities, like New York City, for example, you're so dependent upon things being brought into you. So like your water supply and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you cut that off, and like it really, I don't know how long that it just wouldn't be tenable. So
they made it sound like the subway system in New York would fill up with water within 2-3 months. So maybe you could just drink straight out of the subway.
The Hudson water is like great, or Gowanus is even better.
One of the most interesting things about that video was their approach to Hoover Dam, and they did interview like an engineer at Hoover Dam.
Oh, the crack! Yeah, I remember.
And they made it sound like it can basically run autonomously without people for
a while,
up to a year or more. And the reason it would shut down is because of quagga mussels, which is actually something that we test for in our local lakes here. and you use dogs who can sniff them to sniff boats before they get put into the lake.
Because they just kind of cover everything, right?
Exactly, and they're an invasive species, and they breed really quickly, and they like to breed inside little openings, so like in exhaust pipes and stuff. And in the case of Hoover Dam, they would breed inside the water cooling pipes, and would fill them up eventually, because apparently whatever Lake Mead, I think, is the lake where Hoover Dam is, already has quagga mussels inside of it, and so they have to consistently go down and clean it out as it stands now. So I thought that was really interesting, though, that you could basically, in an apocalypse, if you're like, hey, where's power going to be? Go to Hoover Dam, because apparently even if there's nobody there to run the thing, as long as the quagga mussels are being taken care of, it will basically just run itself.
Have you ever visited and done the tour? Because it's really cool.
I've just driven across it. I should have, I was by myself, so I didn't feel like I was going to get out and walk around.
It's definitely worth it, and I mean, I think Sterling's old enough to enjoy it too, because you kind of like go down in, and they do like this kind of cool tour. And what's interesting is how, I don't want to say like how old the technology, but just how like retro everything looks, and like because it's just still working.
Right, but it's from the 50s or
yeah.
Is it, how old is it?
But it's really, I mean, it's just such a it's definitely well worth doing the tour. And we did this sort of, it was like the engineering room tour or something like that. So but it was very cool to kind of see how it all works and to see how autonomous most of it is.
I found it just kind of interesting that an engineer whose job it is to like take care of Hoover Dam and ensure that it runs is like, yeah, if I wasn't here for a year, it would be fine. Like, how do you justify your paycheck every month? But okay. So that's kind of the collapse of civilization tangent that I was just thinking about this week. But and then other news is there are several zombie-related video games coming out. Most of them, most of these 5 are supposed to come out in 2019 too. So World War Z, which I've seen lots of gameplay, and so that is like in development and almost done. And that's the one where they're showing the swarm. Artificial intelligence swarm effect of the fat zombies piling up on each other and climbing walls. I don't know how you're supposed to win that game because it looks unwinnable to me just from watching the zombies doing this stuff, this behavior. I think you're just supposed to have like unlimited ammunition is the only way I can see it working. Dying Light 2 actually dovetails nicely into the collapse of civilization. If you recall, Dying Light, you probably don't recall this, but I'm going to recall it for you, took place shortly after an outbreak in a
Resort,
Middle Eastern
right?
city. No, that was Dead Island.
Oh,
Dying Light
Island,
took place in a Middle Eastern city. And now I don't know what the location is, but it's apparently 50 years after an outbreak because it's all about like nature taking over the city. So you have like the shell of a city, but lots of greenery and wildlife. Days Gone is the Sony exclusive crap. I really want to play this game, so I'm just kind of salty that I can't play it without a PlayStation. But that's the one where
what do you normally play on?
Xbox or PC.
Xbox, yeah.
Days Gone, though, is the motorcycle gang in open sandbox in the zombie apocalypse. It looks really cool. It looks a lot like Red Dead Redemption 2, which I can't help but talk about. And the Resident Evil 2, not super interested in this, but it's, they're coming back to that franchise where it all began and making more of the that kind of like creepy zombie and mutant horror. And then Last of Us 2, which I have not played. I think it's a PlayStation exclusive, which is zombies and post-apocalyptic human relations. And so those are all coming out this year, is my understanding. A couple of sequels and some, one original IP.
I hear you talk about these, and I get really excited, like, I want to play them, but I worry that I would just become totally fixated on them, which is part of why I don't, because every time I actually try out a game, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to sleep until I finish this thing. So
I think you have the willpower to make it through without total collapse of your
I might have to. Maybe we should dive in at some point and figure out one, and we'll both play it.
That would be awesome. Yeah, playing some co-op. Sure.
Yep. But cool.
Anyway.
These look these look pretty cool. My nephew is really into. He has gotten very into the gaming thing recently, and makes fun of my lack of skill set. So I think I have to try to triumph on this to increase my skill set so that I can not be embarrassing in front of him.
It is good just to, on some level, just to see that the genre is still quite popular in video games, even if TV is not as much, or who knows. We are unable, and people have been saying, oh, the zombie genre is over for a decade already. Well, I'll be interested to see when it actually does end, because it seems like it's going gangbusters still, and that's
yeah. And also, I mean, I think just in terms of a narrative for a game, it makes sense, because it's like these very these scenarios and problem solving and adding in these variables that are kind of cool. So from a surviving point of view.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let me know which one we should try, and I will try it.
Very well.
All right. You ready to jump into this?
A little bit.
All right.
So I will just say this one was called, oh gosh.
You Owe Me a Unicorn.
No, that never should
have happened
to you.
That never should have happened to you. Sorry.
These air on Mondays, and we record on Sundays. So by the time even though this is for Reanimated, a super real-time review system, we're still a week later.
Yeah, true.
But that never should have happened to you is a line that refers to something that, what's the guy's name? Chance Reed or something like that? Clark. Reed.
Clark.
Reed Clark? Clark Reed.
Yeah, one of those.
Clark Mitchell. I don't remember his name, but he's the CIA agent. He's Wolgast's protege now, antagonist, boss. And that's something that he says to Babcock and seals his fate, probably. This episode aired to 3.95 million viewers. It's going down, down, down. Was directed by Jason Ensler, written by Peter Elkoff. And the ratings share is under 1, 0.9. I don't know what I don't know how to read Nielsen numbers, but that doesn't look great.
Nope.
And we left off after our last two review episodes saying, oh, next episode is when it's really going to kick off. And then I don't think that actually is what happened here.
No, it has not. They're still doing a lot of
build up
character backstory here.
Yeah.
I think they're really trying to connect specific characters together to have things happen later on that make sense. So specifically, as it relates to the character of Babcock, who's played by Brianne Howie, we are basically seeing not only her backstory, but also her abilities and some of these virals abilities to enter into dreams, to manipulate. And this is in keeping with what they were doing in the books, which is they would basically pick a familiar. So in this case, she's basically picked Clark, who is the, Wolgast's buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And then wait, who is the cleaner the sweep that,
I don't remember his name, but
I know in the book it was Gray, but I'm not sure if it's the same, if they were going by the same name. But the one that Fanning picks is one of the sort of cleaning guys.
Yeah.
And then, so there's this weird connection, and so they're able to manipulate these people that they have specific connections with. It seems as if they're kind of branching out, like a lot of people are having these dreams, so it's not specific to the familiars, so to speak. And we'll have to see how that plays out, and whether they're going to go there in this case.
To me, that the dreams and the effects on everybody who works in the lower level was always one of the more insidious elements of this part of the story.
Right. So it's this whole thing, the whole idea that they have the virals contained, but they're not really contained because they have these very special skills, and they're manipulating their way out of the facility. And in this case, basically Babcock, they kind of start this whole thing because Babcock kills one of the sweeps, and they're like, oh, we're going to kill her, and this whole thing where she manipulates Clark into not killing her. And then there's also the added element, which is definitely not part of the book, where we've got Carter doing these weird sort of back and forths with Amy, and having these conversations. Like, none of these things, this is all a new element in the book, and I'm assuming that they're doing all of this sort of character building, relationship building, to show a strong relationship between Carter and Amy and Wolgast. And then it's also, I think, to show the sort of insidious nature of what they're doing to Amy. The fact that they see, like, you know, and you see what Fanning is, what Babcock is, and the fact that they're, you know, basically deciding to vaccine this kid with something that is totally unknown. And I think it's trying to show the how kind of evil and it is that they decided to do this. I don't know. I will. And then there's the other piece where we have Lila, who's Wolcast's ex, basically trying to pull together the narrative about the convicts, what's happened to them, to try to get something out in the public, which is a little weird because I feel like they would have noticed and silenced her really quickly if this had actually been happening.
Yeah, but she manages to get to the press, and of course the journalism stuff is always really interesting to me, that this woman's just like not, she has to like stalk a reporter. Yeah. And then the reporter's like, your story checks out. I'm like, well, okay, come on. Okay, yeah. That's cool.
One thing that I noticed, I don't know if you caught this, but so they're showing a lot of flashbacks with Babcock, and her, I guess, original home is supposed to be in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And there's a 28 Days Later poster on her wall.
I did see that. Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, funny guys. So that was kind of funny. And then there's a lot of stuff with, like, so you have Wolgast, because at this point, Wolgast doesn't really know what he had brought all the convicts in for. Like, he knows it's for an experiment. He doesn't really know what it means when they're doing this thing with Amy, and then manages to get downstairs into the sort of holding pens and sees Fanning. So
yeah, the fact that he manages to get out of his room, I think, is crazy. Pretty crazy. Like, and the fact that they don't have cameras in the room is insane, because these are holding cells. They're not like hospital rooms, but they're acting as if, oh yeah, this is just a hospital room for people who are potentially turning into vampires. We know that that's what they do.
Right, and yet, also, it's not exactly secure if Carter and Amy are able to pass messages in between the rooms. Yeah,
they have connecting doors.
And then he manages to have this conversation with Carter. Like, it's all a little bit much. So I admit, I thought things were going to really start to move with this. They did not. So I wonder what will happen during the next episode. But basically, I mean, the upshot of all of this is that the virals are becoming ever more powerful and manipulative. And so I think it's just a matter of time, obviously, before they escape. And they are the ones that are truly in control here, despite the fact that the scientists think they are in control.
I wonder, and you've read the book more recently, are they going to, do you think, develop any more of the virals, since there's 12 of them?
I don't know, because even in the book, basically they focused on the virals that they are currently focusing on, and the others were kind of like, sort of like, they would mention their names specifically, but you didn't really see them a lot. They definitely didn't really develop their characters. You would get like little snippets about what their background or what their crime was, because they were supposed to be all of them were like kind of evil, like murderers and rapists and people that were never going to get out of jail when they basically volunteered them for this program. They were basically trying to pick people that nobody would really care whether anything happened to them or not. Mm-hmm. But they were kind of throwaway characters. So, you know, we definitely saw Fanning, we saw Babcock. Babcock was absolutely like the main character in terms of like what we saw in the later books. But they just kind of had them, you know, there as like kind of throwaways. Like the 12 thing is, as it relates to the 12 apostles, was certainly there. But nothing, they didn't really get into it. And they've done a little bit of that here. Like, we've seen like flashes of some of the other inmates, so to speak.
Like the one who I figure they might decide to showcase is the one with all the white power tattoos and stuff. But she's never had any lines and doesn't seem to...
Right. So they haven't done a lot with that. So I'm not sure if they're going to. It is a lot of characters to deal with, like,
Yeah.
diverging storylines. So we'll see what happens. I think, they're kind of going mainly the way of the books in that they're focusing so much on Babcock and Fanning. So we shall see. And, they've had whatever that sweep guy, Gray, they've had him showing a lot. So I'm assuming they're going to do a little bit more with him.
Yeah. He's had plenty of lines, and admits that he belongs to Fanning in like a conference room, and nobody picks up on that, or they kind of do, but they don't. Also, Lear, when he's watching Babcock and Fanning not eat, he's like, what do you do at the dinner table when you're not eating?
Yeah.
And he like has this leap of like, oh, they're having a conversation mentally, and I was like, okay. What I don't understand is how the young scientist, the one who did all the exposition in the first episode, is so convinced that they're vegetables. How are they able to have telepathic conversations with no brain activity, I guess,
right,
is my question. How does that make any sense?
Right.
It doesn't. Does the book explain that at all? Or does the book have the same take on their vegetative state?
No, I mean, I think it basically, because in the book they're monitoring their brainwaves, and you can tell when they're awake or when they're not. But they have transformed into something totally non-human. So I think
they can't interpret it.
Right. So they almost are looking at them as being more animalistic versus human. But they can definitely tell certain things about them. And I don't think in the book there was any question about the fact, I mean, they're not communicating like humans, but there's definitely something there. I think their assumption in the books are more that they are just reacting to sort of the baser instincts as opposed to having higher thought. And it isn't as obvious, like people aren't talking so blatantly about the dreams in the book. Like this is something that sort of the lower level workers are talking about.
Yeah.
And people are experiencing them, but they're not talking to each other about them. So there isn't that sort of open communication about the fact that this is happening to people. I
have a hazy memory from reading the book, 100 years ago, that there was a scene with Clark Richards, like with a coffee standing in the cafeteria or something like that. Does that ring a bell? Where he's like spacing out at the coffee maker, and somebody's like, "Hey, were you expecting that thing to do something for you?"
Yeah, and he is, and I mean, but he doesn't. He isn't talking to anybody about the fact that he's dreaming. And in this case, it seems as if his girlfriend knows that that's happening. The other scientist, the main researcher.
Right. Yeah, because he says it's the same. Dreaming about Babcock, or.
Yeah, and so, but that is never within the books. And I kind of think that it's interesting that they decide to go this route, because one of the scarier parts is that basically the virals are able to do this in the books without the sort of grown-ups knowing, so to speak. And when all hell breaks loose, they are blindsided by it.
So in my attempt to see how other people are reacting to this, I've looked around. There's the people who are reviewing and paying attention to this show are not our usual go-tos. AV Club reviewed the pilot and nothing since, and they hated the pilot.
Yeah, the Vulture usually does some stuff, and they've been reviewing it. They've been more doing sort of rundowns without judgment calls, so to speak.
Okay. It's just interesting. I feel like, the ratings aren't amazing, but they're not terrible. And but it's curious that the critics and the people who like all kinds of shows are totally taking a pass on this, which makes me wonder if we're going to even get through the first season.
Yeah, we'll see. Oh, and I should also point out that Lacey is alive. So
yeah, that was a total...
just throwing that out there.
Okay, yep, she's alive, and she's just hanging out in the motel room with Lila, wife. So strange. Yeah, she got shot.
I know.
Shot. I mean, one time, but she went down and was appeared to be dead, and now she's just like, yeah, I'm okay. But I mean, she did go down in a house with a surgeon or a doctor. So
true. Do you want to continue reviewing, or do you want to pick something else? Do you want to try another thing and come back to this?
Well, I will admit that Kingdom is just staring at me in my Netflix queue.
I will admit that I was thinking the same thing. So why don't we, maybe what I think might be a good idea is if we let the passage kind of do what it's going to do and maybe wrap it up later after it's kind of finished out its season.
Its season or series, depending on how it goes, which would
I
be
have
a
a
real,
feeling-
it would be a real shame. But I'm going to keep watching it. Yes, but I agree with you. Let's pick up the Kingdom and hit that next time.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
I want Netflix to know that I really, really want to watch The Kingdom, and I've been sitting here with great willpower, not
Me
clicking on
too.
it.
Netflix keeps putting this up as something that I should watch, so much so that they've sent me multiple emails about it.
Yep.
Do you have the same thing?
Yeah, they're constantly trying to tell me to watch stuff, but
Yeah, that and
usually I'm
the-
like, yeah, I watched that yesterday.
yeah.
What are you talking about, Netflix?
They keep sending me that and the Ted Bundy thing, which I don't know what it says about me.
I think
but-
it might be your demographic. Apparently, there have been a lot of weird love letters happening.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Ladies love them some Ted Bundy.
Ugh.
I know.
Do not. Ugh. But in any case, so we'd love to hear what everybody thinks about the passage so far, and we'll definitely come back to that after we've gone through the series a little bit. So join us next time when we start discussing Kingdom. And if you'd like to reach out to us, send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or leave us a note, reanimatedpodcast.com, yes. And then, or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast.
There you
is
go.
the Twitter handle. Woo! And until next time, ciao.
All right, bye.